Emma doubted the truth of this sentiment. She had a great idea that people who had extensive grounds themselves cared very little for the extensive grounds of anybody else, but it was not worth while to attack an error so double-dyed, and therefore only said in reply, "When you have seen more of the country, I am afraid you will think you have overrated Hartfield. Surrey is full of beauties." "Oh, yes, I am quite aware of that. It is the garden of England, you know. Surrey is the garden of England." "Yes, but we must not rest our claims on that distinction. Many counties, I believe, are called the garden of England, as well as Surrey." "No, I fancy not," replied Mrs. Elton, with a most satisfied smile. "I never heard any county but Surrey called so." Emma was silenced. "My brother and sister have promised us a visit in the spring, or summer at farthest," continued Mrs. Elton, "and that will be our time for exploring. While they are with us, we shall explore a great deal, I say. They will have their barouche landau, of course, which holds four perfectly, and therefore, without saying anything of our carriage, we should be able to explore the different beauties extremely well. They would hardly come in their chaise, I think, at that season of the year. Indeed, when the time draws on, I shall decidedly recommend their bringing the barouche landau. It will be so very much preferable. When people come into a beautiful country of this sort, you know, Miss Woodhouse, one naturally wishes them to see as much as possible, and Mr. Suckling is extremely fond of exploring. We explored to King's Weston twice last summer, in that way, most delightfully, just after our first having the barouche landau. You have many parties of that kind here, I suppose, Miss Woodhouse, every summer?" "No, not immediately here. We are rather out of distance of the very striking beauties which attract the sort of parties you speak of, and we are a very quiet set of people, I believe, more disposed to stay at home than engage in schemes of pleasure." "Ah, there is nothing like staying at home for real comfort. Nobody can be more devoted to home than I am. I was quite a proverb for it at Maple Grove. Many a time has Selina said, when she had been going to Bristol, 'I really cannot get this girl to move from the house. I absolutely must go in myself, though I hate being stuck up in the barouche landau without a companion, but Augusta, I believe, with her own good will, would never stir beyond the park paling.' Many a time she has said so, and yet I am no advocate for entire seclusion. I think, on the contrary, when people shut themselves up entirely from society, it is a very bad thing, and that it is much more advisable to mix in the world in a proper degree, without living in it either too much or too little. I perfectly understand your situation, however, Miss Woodhouse," looking towards Mr. Woodhouse. "Your father's state of health must be a great drawback. Why does he not try Bath? Indeed he should. Let me recommend Bath to you. I assure you, I have no doubt of its doing Mr. Woodhouse good." "My father tried it more than once formerly, but without receiving any benefit; and Mr. Perry, whose name, I daresay, is not unknown to you, does not conceive it would be at all more likely to be useful now." "Ah, that's a great pity, for I assure you, Miss Woodhouse, where the waters do agree, it is quite wonderful the relief they give. In my Bath life I have seen such instances of it, and it is so cheerful a place that it could not fail of being used to Mr. Woodhouse's spirits, which I understand are sometimes much depressed. And as to its recommendations to you, I fancy I need not take much pains to dwell upon them. The advantages of Bath to the young are pretty generally understood. It would be a charming introduction for you, who have lived so secluded a life, and I could immediately secure you some of the best society in the place. A line from me would bring you a little host of acquaintance, and my particular friend, Mrs. Partridge, the lady I have always resided with when in Bath, would be most happy to show you any attentions, and would be the very person for you to go into public with." This was as much as Emma could bear without being impolite. The idea of her being indebted to Mrs. Elton for what was called an introduction, of her going into public under the auspices of a friend of Mrs. Elton's, probably some vulgar, dashing widow, who, with the help of a boarder, just made shift to live! The dignity of Miss Woodhouse of Hartfield was sunk indeed. She restrained herself, however, from any reproofs she could have given, and only thanked Mrs. Elton coolly; but their going to Bath was quite out of the question, and she was not perfectly convinced that the place might suit her better than her father. And then, to prevent further outrage and indignation, changed the subject directly. "I do not ask whether you are musical, Mrs. Elton. Upon these occasions a lady's character generally precedes her, and Highbury has long known that you are a superior performer." "Oh, no, indeed, I must protest against any such idea. A superior performer! Very far from it, I assure you. Consider from how partial a quarter your information came. I am dotingly fond of music, passionately fond, and my friends say I am not entirely devoid of taste, but as to anything else, upon my honour, my performance is mediocre to the last degree. You, Miss Woodhouse, I well know, play delightfully. I assure you it has been the greatest satisfaction, comfort, and delight to me, to hear what a musical society I am got into. I absolutely cannot do without music. It is a necessary of life to me, and having always been used to a very musical society, both at Maple Grove and in Bath, it would have been a most serious sacrifice. I honestly said as much to Mr. E. when he was speaking of my future home, and expressing his fears lest the retirement of it should be disagreeable, and the inferiority of the house too. Knowing what I have been accustomed to, of course he was not wholly without apprehension. When he was speaking of it in that way, I honestly said that the world I could give up, parties, balls, plays, for I had no fear of retirement. Blessed with so many resources within myself, the world was not necessary to me. I could do very well without it. To those who had no resources it was a different thing, but my resources made me quite independent. And as to smaller-sized rooms than I had been used to, I really could not give it a thought. I hoped I was perfectly equal to any sacrifice of that description. Certainly I had been accustomed to every luxury at Maple Grove, but I did assure him that 2 carriages were not necessary to my happiness, nor were spacious apartments. But, said I, to be quite honest, I do not think I can live without something of a musical society. I condition for nothing else, but without music life would be a blank to me.